juggling a lot of tasks and suddenly you have fewer resources or tighter deadlines. How do you keep everything on track without losing quality? Welcome to ProjexCellence ProDigy. Today, we will talk about resource optimization and schedule compression. We will explain how to manage resources and timelines better with methods like resource labeling and smoothing. And we will also learn techniques like crashing and fast tracking to help finish projects on time, even when things get tricky. Let's get started. Resource optimization. It is a project management technique aimed at making the most efficient use of resources such as time, money, and manpower while achieving project objectives. The goal is to balance resource allocation to ensure that projects are completed within their constraints, minimizing cost and maximizing productivity without compromising quality. There are two primary techniques for resource optimization: resource labeling and resource smoothing. Another topic will be schedule compression. It is a project management technique used to shorten the project schedule without altering the project scope. This is typically done to meet a tight deadline or to recover time lost due to delays. It has two main components: crashing and fast tracking. Let's discuss these in detail. Resource labeling. Resource labeling is used when resources as people or equipment are scarce and cannot be assigned to several tasks at once. It impacts the schedule by adjusting the start and finish dates of tasks to fit within the resource limits and balance the workload. Imagine a construction project where we need crane for several tasks, and it's true that crane can only be in one place at a time. So, in this situation, we could apply the resource labeling technique. We have to adjust the task's timing which require the crane. If suppose two tasks requiring crane, so one task may be delayed until the crane is available. So what will happen here? The project timeline will be extended. We will talk about impact of labeling on project. So what will be the benefits? Prevent over allocation. So labeling ensures that no resource, whether human or material, is overburdened by redistributing work across available time. So which lead to better work-life balance for people and reduce the stress. Improved long-term sustainability. We are preventing the overwork. So it maintains consistent productivity and avoids the burnout, which supports sustained output over the life of the project. Accurate resource utilization. Labeling process ensures that resources are assigned according to their availability. So which will lead better use of the team and equipment without over or underutilization. Reduces conflict. By balancing the workload, we are reducing the potential conflicts between tasks that require the same resources at the same time, which will help streamlining the execution process. But where we have the benefit, we have some drawbacks as well, like extended project duration. Since the workload is adjusted to fit resource availability, so by using labeling, it will lead to an increase in the overall project timeline, which can be problematic when deadlines are very tight. Increased complexity. We are shuffling the task to align with the resource availability, which can be complicated for the project schedule, and it may require more detailed planning and tracking. Impact on critical path. Resource labeling can affect the critical path by extending the task duration, so which will cause delays in the key project milestones. Delayed deliverables. So we are getting the deliverable late. The redistribution of tasks may result in delayed deliverables, especially when tasks need to be spread out to prevent the overloading resources. Next is resource smoothing. Resource smoothing makes the best use of resources without changing the critical path or extending the project's timeline. It adjusts tasks within the available float, so the overall project finish date stays the same. We try to understand it with one example. Suppose a team is building a new mobile app and the testing phase is set to happen after all the main features are developed. In the meantime, the project manager observes that the QA team will have too much work during the final week of testing, and they have less workload earlier during development phase. So to avoid the overloading the QA team at the end, the project manager spreads out their work more evenly. So he will adjust the schedule such way that some testing happens alongside development instead of waiting to test everything at the end. So similar to the labeling, when we apply the smoothing, it will also impact the project. So what are the benefits? So benefits, the keep project on track. So unlike labeling, smoothing works within the existing project timeline and ensures that the project's completion date remains unchanged, which is advantageous when deadlines are fixed. Balanced resource use. It ensures resources are allocated in a more even manner, avoiding peaks and troughs in workload, while ensuring the resources are not underutilized. Prevents burnout. Smoothing ensures that no individual or piece of equipment is overloaded. So it will reduce the risk of fatigue and burnout, and it will help maintain a consistent pace throughout the project. Less disruptive to schedule. Since resource smoothing works within the project's slack or float, so it does not alter the project's critical path, making it less disruptive to the overall schedule. Come to the drawbacks. So what are the drawbacks? Limited flexibility. Resource smoothing can only be applied when there is a slack or float in the project schedule. So it limits its usefulness when a project is already tightly scheduled or has little room for adjustment. Resource conflicts. In complex projects, smoothing might not resolve all conflicts between tasks that require the same resources, especially when dependencies are involved. May not optimize resource usage fully. Resource smoothing balances workload. It may not always result in the most efficient use of resources, particularly in cases where float is limited, which will lead to periods of underutilization. Requires close monitoring. Constant adjustments are needed to ensure that resources are being used efficiently while maintaining the schedule. So it will increase the management workload. Crashing. Crashing is when extra resources are added to critical tasks to reduce their duration. This could involve hiring more staff, using overtime, or boosting equipment capacity. Crashing usually raises project cost because of the extra resources or overtime expenses. Let's understand this with one example. Suppose a construction company is building a high-rise office building. Initially, the project was scheduled to take 18 months. Midway through, the client requests that the building be completed 2 months earlier to meet a lease agreement with a tenant. So, to meet the new deadline, the project manager decides to apply the schedule crashing technique. So, what he will do? He will hire additional workers to speed up construction activities. He will bring in more subcontractors to work on different tasks. He may extend work hours by scheduling 2 or 3 shifts to keep construction going 24/7. He may rent additional equipment like crane, excavators. So, what impact will be on project? If we talk about benefits, so it is reduced project duration. So by adding more resources, labor, equipment, critical tasks are completed faster, shortening the overall timeline. Maintains activity sequence. Crashing keeps the original activity sequence intact. It minimizes disruptions to task flow and planning. Improved deadline control. It allows project managers to better control deadlines, and it helps them meet the critical milestones, especially when delays have occurred. Project flexibility. It gives a flexibility in adjusting resources where there is a room for improvement without changing the project scope. What are the drawbacks? Increased cost. We are adding more resources means higher expenses, whether it's for hiring additional workers, procuring more equipment, or paying for overtimes. Resource overload. Existing resource may be pushed to their limits, which will cause the burnout or exhaustion. Diminishing returns. Adding more resources doesn't always speed up the project proportionally, and it may lead to inefficiencies if not carefully managed. Risk of quality issues. Pushing to meet tight deadlines could lead to compromised quality, as tasks may be rushed, leading to mistakes or rework. Fast tracking. Fast tracking means adjusting the schedule so that tasks that were supposed to be done one after another are now done at the same time or with some overlap. This doesn't need more resources, but it can cause risk, especially if one task relies on the other being finished first. We take similar project example to understand this concept as we discussed for crashing. The construction company is working on a high-rise office building. Initial completion schedule was 18 months. Now on customer request, it is pushing the new completion date to 16 months, 2 months earlier. So to meet this new deadline, the project manager decides to implement fast tracking by overlapping certain phases of the construction process that were originally planned to be sequential. So instead of waiting for the completion of the structural framework for the entire building before starting interior work, the team will begin to work on the interiors of lower floors while the upper floors are still being constructed. Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems are typically installed after the structural work is done. But in this case, this MEP installation for completed floors is started while construction on the upper floors continues. So, which will allow multiple teams to work simultaneously. The landscaping and the exterior work usually planned towards the end of the project. So it may begin while the building is still being completed. What will be the impact on the project of fast tracking? If we talk about benefits, so the faster completion. Fast tracking allows overlapping tasks which can significantly speed up the project timeline, which will lead to the earlier completion of project. Cost savings. Unlike crashing, fast tracking does not always require additional resources, so which make it a cost-effective way to shorten the schedule. Efficient use of time. By working on tasks in parallel, time is maximized, which will help meet tight deadlines and accommodating urgent requests. Client satisfaction. Meeting or exceeding the project deadline due to fast tracking can boost the client satisfaction, especially when early delivery is crucial. We talk about drawbacks here. So, increased risk of rework. Overlapping tasks can increase the risk of mistakes or rework since one task might depend on the accurate completion of another task still in progress. Coordination challenges. So, multiple teams are working on parallel activities which require more coordination. It can lead to communication problems or delays or inefficiencies. Potential for increased changes. Changes in the sequence of tasks can create uncertainty, which will lead to more change requests, revisions, or issues that were not anticipated earlier. Schedule uncertainty. Since tasks are being done in parallel, any disruption in one task may affect the timeline of another, which will lead to unpredictability in the overall schedule. So, to wrap up, we have explored 4 key techniques for managing time and resources in project management: resource labeling, resource smoothing, crashing, and fast tracking. Resource labeling helps balance limited resources by adjusting the schedule. Though it may extend the project's duration to prevent overloading. Resource smoothing ensures efficient use of resources without impacting the critical path or overall timeline. Crashing shortens the duration of critical tasks by adding more resources, though it often comes at the cost of increased expenses and potential strain on the team. Finally, we spoke about fast tracking, which allows tasks to be performed in parallel, reducing time but increasing the risk of rework and coordination challenges. By understanding and applying these techniques, project managers can better optimize schedules and resources, ensuring projects stay on track while meeting deadlines and quality standards. So that's all for today. I'll catch you in the next episode. Before we sign off, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the ProjexCellence ProDigy channel. Your support makes a big difference to me. Namaste, goodbye, Sampai Jumpa.